people's lives.
More than anything, this film can be considered an emotional learning tool. Being diagnosed with AIDS in today's world is terrifying, and even more so in 1985. AIDS patients face fears of surviving and fears of social isolation. When we watch Ron go through his diagnosis on the screen, it becomes easier for us to imagine the feelings that someone who is diagnosed with HIV or AIDS go through after their diagnosis. While watching the movie, I noticed that after Ron's diagnosis, he seemed to go through the 5 stages of grief in order. For those who aren't familiar, the 5 stages of grief are a basic outline of one way that people tend to handle a loss or an emotional setback. The first stage is denial. When Ron first gets diagnosed, we watch him have an outburst in the hospital and insist that the doctors made a mistake, as seen in the picture on the left. The second stage we watch Ron go through is anger. Ron's anger is provoked by the bigotry of his former friends, who call him homosexual slurs and refuse to make casual contact with him. In the picture on the right, we see Ron physically confronting one of his former friends in a grocery store. Next, we see Ron go through stage 3, bargaining. Ron spends hours in the library doing research and seeing several doctors, hoping to be prescribed AZT, which was only being given in double-blind studies at the time. Then we see Ron go through the 4th stage, depression. This picture on the right is from one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the film, when Ron has a breakdown in his car and he is pictured looking at a gun, subtextually referencing that he's considering taking his own life. Lastly, we see Ron find acceptance with his diagnosis. We see Ron start treating himself, stop doing drugs and drinking alcohol, and start the Dallas Buyers Club, providing unapproved AIDS medications to those like him that feel like they're out of options. This robust display of emotion from a character who credits himself a very manly man helps destigmatize HIV and AIDS diagnoses, proving they can happen to anyone, as well as showing that a meaningful life is possible after an AIDS diagnosis. When Ron first came to the hospital, he was given 30 days to live. However, by giving himself supportive care, he managed to live 7 years past his diagnosis. We also see Ron experience growth in his professional and academic life. After seeing him start as a poor man doing electrical work in a rural part of Texas, we see him gain wealth through the Buyers Club, become an activist for AIDS victims, and learn about treating the HIV virus. In doing this, Ron proves that even after hitting absolute rock bottom after an AIDS diagnosis, it is possible to get up again and make a meaningful life for yourself. One social issue when it came to AIDS diagnoses that we mentioned earlier in the presentation was the blatant homophobia and social exclusion that comes along with a diagnosis. Ron meets the character Rayon, a transgender woman who challenges his beliefs and makes him more accepting of the LGBTQ community. Ron and Rayon's friendship is an example of how two people from two very different worlds can come together and understand one another in a productive way. So, to recap, Dallas Buyers Club teaches us that AIDS is not just a gay disease, that it is possible to live a fulfilling life after an AIDS diagnosis, and that it's possible to grow in your mindset and grow your tolerance for others while still remaining true to yourself and not changing who you are. On a less emotional and more practical note, the film also teaches the importance of letting dying patients receive experimental medication as a last resort, as well as proving that the pharmaceutical industry and even the FDA are not immune to corruption.
I'd like to talk about the accuracy of the Dallas Buyers Club movie and the conclusions that it comes to. Firstly, I'd like to talk about romanticizing and downplaying done in the movie. The story is greatly exaggerated in the movie to make it more entertaining for viewers. For example, when Ron is diagnosed in the movie, he makes a scene and throws paper in the air and starts shouting slurs, which is not something he did in real life. Secondly, Ron and his struggles were romanticized, and the Dallas Buyers Club was just assumed to be good. Peptide T, in reality, did not work like Ron claimed. Also, the movie downplayed the importance of the trans and gay perspective. From a movie that claims to be pro-gay, it left the perspective of Rayon in the background and favored to straight Ron. I am now going to show the clip in which Ron gets diagnosed with HIV in the movie. Warning, content is not appropriate for all audiences.
You've tested positive for HIV, which is the virus that causes AIDS.
You fucking kidding me? Talking about that fucking rock cock sucking Hudson bullshit?
Mr. Woodruff, have you ever used intravenous drugs? Have you ever engaged in homosexual conduct?
Homo. You say homo?
Yeah.
That's what she said, isn't it? You fucking kidding me? I ain't no faggot, motherfucker. I don't even know no fucking faggots. Look at me. What do you see, huh? The goddamn rodeo's what you see.
Mr. Woodruff.
All right, so fucking watch it.
Mr. Woodruff, can you just...
No, I can't do shit. You speak fucking English, motherfucker. Call me a motherfucking faggot. I'll whip your fucking ass, boy.
Your T-cell count is down to 9. A healthy person has between 500 and 1,500. So frankly, we're surprised you're even alive.
Surprise this. You made a fucking mistake. Must have mixed up my blood samples with some daisy puller or something. 'Cause that shit ain't me.
We ran the blood test several times. Here's some information about HIV and AIDS that you might find informative, and these are your test results.
Mr. Woodruff, if you could listen to me for a moment. I know this can be a very scary thing. I know you're probably feeling overwhelmed right now. But what we would like to do is to impress upon you the gravity of your situation. Based on your health, based on your condition, based on all the evidence we have, we estimate you have 30 days left to put your affairs in order.
Next, I'm going to talk about some simplifications and inaccuracies made in the film. The first simplification is that the FDA was just assumed to be bad, when in reality there were many different perspectives within the agency. Secondly, Ron's personality differs in the movie than in real life. Ron is homophobic in the movie and is seen as more masculine, as an uber-masculine character. And the reason for this is so that his diagnosis with HIV later in the film would be more shocking than it was in real life. Rayon and Dr. Eve are fictional characters, and they exist to personify a group of people. Rayon represents all of the LGBTQ people in the situation, and Dr. Eve represents all of the doctors who are sympathetic to Ron's plight. Finally, Ron was only a rodeo enthusiast and never actually rode himself. It contributes the same to his personality in that it makes his diagnosis of HIV more shocking. The setting and time period plays a huge role in the film. The film is set in the 80s in Texas, a time and place where people weren't as tolerant of differing perspectives as they are now. Texas was one of the last 13 states to have gay marriage approved, and they had to have their state constitution overruled by a Supreme Court ruling in 2015. Dallas Buyers Club showcases two main injustices: anti-LGBT stigma and pharmaceutical companies withholding drugs for profit motive. Dallas Buyers Club shows anti-LGBTQ stigma through Rayon and Ron. It shows it through Rayon when Ron's former friend refuses to shake her hand. The movie also shows homophobia through Rayon, through the character of Rayon's father. Rayon's father claims that her being trans was a choice, and Rayon had to clarify, "No, this is who I am." Despite being straight, Ron is also a way in which the movie explores homophobia. When Ron first gets AIDS, it's considered a gay person's disease, so all of Ron's former friends assume he is gay. We see them vandalize and lock Ron out of his trailer and call him slurs. Ron himself also shows some of this stigma before his diagnosis and during his diagnosis, as in the previous scene above. The movie shows a learning tool against this stigma because it shows the viewer firsthand how gay people live and allows them to emphasize and see the impact having these people being called these slurs has on them. The fact that Ron used to bash on gay people and immediately stops when he is on the receiving end of things also sends a powerful message on how hurtful these words that people call gay people can be. The movie also shows the injustice caused by big pharmaceutical companies and this is the central issue of the film. It does this through Ron and Rayon's desperation and formation of the Buyers Club. The FDA bans drugs like peptide Ds so that they can get a monopoly on AIDS medication. Ron pays a hospital employee exorbitant sums of money to obtain AZT and travels all around the world to get the drugs he needs. At one point, due to the hopelessness of getting proper treatment, Ron contemplates suicide. Rayon sells her life insurance and sacrifices herself to ensure the success of the club. Seeing all of the sacrifices and struggles of Ron and Rayon firsthand allows the viewer to sympathize them, serving as a lesson for drug accessibility.
Thank you for listening to our presentation. Here's our works cited.